In May of 2020, somewhere in Hamilton, Ontario, a 17-year-old sat down at a computer and over the course of a single day stole $48 million. He never touched the victim. He never broke into a building. He never held a weapon. He made one phone call to a cell phone company, pretending to be someone he wasn't, and convinced an employee to move a stranger's phone number onto a device he controlled. That was it. That was the whole crime. A phone number. The money belonged to an American tech entrepreneur on the other side of the continent, a man who made his money in the early days of the internet. It took the teenager less than 24 hours to take it. Police would later call it the largest cryptocurrency theft from a single person ever recorded in North America. For more than a year, investigators on two sides of the border, the Hamilton Police, the FBI, the United States Secret Service, had almost nothing. No name, no suspect. $48 million had simply vanished into the blockchain, scattered across wallets they couldn't open and couldn't trace. And then the 17-year-old who had just pulled off a nearly perfect crime did something small. Something that, in the entire scope of a $48 million heist, should not have mattered at all. He wanted a cooler username for his PlayStation. That one purchase is the reason we can tell this story. But to understand how a username can undo a $48 million heist, you first have to understand how a single phone call started one. The weakness he exploited is called a SIM swap, and it is one of the most effective attacks in modern cybercrime, because it doesn't target a computer, it targets a person. Your phone number is not really tied to your phone, it's tied to a small chip inside it, the SIM card, and that connection isn't permanent. When you lose a phone or upgrade to a new one, your carrier moves your number onto a new SIM. That process is routine, it happens thousands of times a day, and it is handled by customer service employees who are trained above all to be helpful. That is the gap. In a SIM swap, the attacker calls your phone company and pretends to be you. They say they've lost their phone. They ask to transfer the number to a new SIM, one the attacker is holding. If they can get a customer service representative to believe them, your phone number is now theirs. And your phone number is the key to almost everything. Think about what happens when you forget a password. The website texts a code to your phone. Think about two-factor authentication, the security feature designed to protect you. It texts a code to your phone. Whoever controls your number controls those codes. And whoever controls those codes can reset your passwords, one account at a time, and lock you out of your own digital life. In May 2020, the 17-year-old in Hamilton did exactly this. He targeted an American entrepreneur named Josh Jones, a man who made his money in the early days of the internet and who held a huge amount of cryptocurrency. He tricked a phone company employee into reassigning Jones's number. He intercepted the two-factor authentication codes. He reset the passwords, and one by one, he took control of Jones's cryptocurrency wallets and began moving the contents into wallets of his own. By the time it was over, 48 million Canadian dollars in digital assets were gone in a single day. But here's the thing about a heist like this. Taking the money turns out to be the easy part. Keeping it is where every cryptocurrency thief in history has met the same problem. In the movies, stolen money is cash in a duffel bag or numbers moving between bank accounts that police can trace and freeze. Cryptocurrency is neither. It is not held in a bank. There is no customer service line to call, no fraud department to reverse the transaction, no institution that can simply undo what happened. Once the assets move to a wallet the thief controls, they are simply gone. And the blockchain, the public ledger that records every cryptocurrency transaction, is both the investigator's best friend and worst enemy. Every transaction is visible. Anyone can watch the money move. But the wallets themselves are just strings of characters. They don't have names attached. You can watch $48 million travel from wallet to wallet to wallet and never once learn who is holding the keys. This is what investigators were facing. The theft had been reported. American authorities had brought in the FBI and the Secret Service. They had partnered with police in Canada. They knew the money had been stolen. They could even watch some of it move, but they had no person, no name, no face. Just a ghost who had reached across the continent, taken a fortune, and disappeared back into the network. A perfect crime like this depends on one thing above all else: the discipline to do nothing, to sit on the money, to not spend a single dollar in any way that connects the anonymous wallet to a real human being. Professional money launderers understand this. They move stolen crypto through long, patient sequences of steps designed to break the trail, and they wait, sometimes for years, before touching anything. The person who had just stolen $48 million was not a professional money launderer. He was 17. And 17-year-olds want things that professional money launderers have trained themselves not to want. This particular 17-year-old wanted something very specific. To understand what it was and why it would cost him everything, you have to understand a corner of the internet most people don't know exists. In online gaming, a username is identity. It is the name other players see, the name attached to every match, every achievement, every interaction. And short, simple usernames, a single common word, a single name, are extremely rare because they were claimed years ago in the earliest days of a platform and almost never come back onto the market. Among collectors, these are called OG usernames, and they carry real status. A one-word handle signals that you were there early or that you have the means to acquire something almost no one can get. They are traded, sometimes for thousands of dollars, in private deals between people who care a great deal about how they are seen online. The 17-year-old wanted one of these. Specifically, on the PlayStation Network, he wanted the username God. So he arranged to buy it. He found the person who controlled the handle and he paid for it, using some of the cryptocurrency he had just stolen. It was, in the context of a $48 million fortune, almost nothing. A tiny transaction. A teenager spending a tiny piece of his new fortune on a status symbol that mattered only to him, and to the small community of people who would recognize what it meant. But that transaction had a thread attached to it, the payment for the username connected to an account, and that account connected to more information. And investigators, who had spent over a year staring at anonymous wallets with no names attached, finally had a thread to pull. They pulled it. It led them across the blockchain, out of the anonymous network and into the real world, to an address in Hamilton, Ontario. The ghost had a house. And in November 2021, 18 months after $48 million vanished in a single day, the ghost got a knock on the door. When the Hamilton Police Service announced the arrest, the details were wild, even with so much held back. A joint investigation with the FBI and the US Secret Service. The largest cryptocurrency theft from one person ever reported in North America, and a suspect they could not name, because he had been a minor when he committed the crime. He was charged with theft over $5,000 and possession of property obtained by crime. Investigators seized more than $7 million in cryptocurrency, a fraction of what had been taken. The rest, presumably, had already been moved, spent, or hidden somewhere the seizure couldn't reach. The case that police announced to the world as a mystery became, in a Hamilton courtroom in 2022, a story about a person. The Crown laid out the mechanics of the theft, the single day, the American victim, the year the teenager had already spent in pre-trial custody, which prosecutors acknowledged was a significant sentence for someone so young. And then his defense lawyer painted the portrait of who was actually sitting in that courtroom. A thoughtful, intelligent, mild-mannered kid, raised by a single parent who had struggled to provide for him. A teenager with anxiety and low self-esteem who didn't have many friends, except online. His lawyers would later describe him as someone largely raised by the internet, a psychologically vulnerable teenager desperate to be seen, accepted, and valued, who had found attention and admiration in virtual worlds that the real one hadn't given him. If there was a silver lining, his lawyer told the court, the arrest had been a wake-up call. There was, he said, a burning desire on the young man's part to make things right. This, he said, was him growing up, because he was convicted as a minor under Canada's Youth Criminal Justice Act. His identity is sealed. Not for a few years. Not until the case is over. Forever. It is illegal to publish his name, now or at any point in the future. The person behind the biggest single victim crypto theft in North American history will never be known. He was released on bail in May 2022, while the courts decided what the rest of his future looked like. A wake-up call, a desire to make things right, a kid growing up. Within weeks of walking out on bail, he was stealing again. From May to July of 2022, while the largest crypto theft case in Canadian history was still working through the courts, while his lawyer's words about redemption were still hanging in the air, the same person ran an entirely new scheme. This time he wasn't doing SIM swaps against a single wealthy target. He was hijacking popular accounts on the social media platform X, formerly Twitter, and using them to post links to fraudulent websites. Followers who clicked and connected their crypto wallets had them drained. Prosecutors would later say he defrauded as many as 200 people of more than $1 million Canadian dollars. 200 victims, while on bail, for the crime that had already made him the largest single victim crypto thief in his country's history. This time, the case went to the United States, and this time, he was an adult. US prosecutors did not describe a vulnerable, mild-mannered kid. They described a serial online fraudster, someone who had chosen, in their words, to immerse himself in the world of cybercrime. In 2025, a US court sentenced him to 1 year in prison and ordered him to pay roughly $320,000 in restitution, a figure prosecutors called a conservative estimate, covering the losses of just 2 of his hundreds of victims. So the timeline, in full, is this. At 17, he committed what police called the largest single-person crypto theft in North American history. He dodged the FBI, the Secret Service, and Canadian police for a year and a half. He was caught because he wanted a gaming username. He was convicted as a minor, his name sealed forever. He was released on bail with his lawyer describing his burning desire to make things right. And while on that bail, he stole from 200 more people until a second set of crimes, committed as an adult, finally put him in a prison cell on the other side of the border. Which leaves only one question worth asking. Not how he did it. We know how he did it. Why couldn't he stop? There is a version of this story that is almost admiring. A teenager, alone in a bedroom in Hamilton, reaches across an entire continent and takes $48 million from a dot-com millionaire in a single day without ever leaving his chair. It sounds, told a certain way, like genius. But look at what the genius was spent on. Not an escape. Not a new life. Not even, in the end, the money itself. Most of which he could never safely touch, scattered across wallets that connected straight back to a crime. It was spent on a username, on being called God in a video game, on being seen and admired by strangers online, the one place a lonely, anxious teenager had ever felt valued. And when the money was gone and the courts were circling, he went back. Not for the wealth, but for the only thing the stealing had ever really given him. He could break the most secure systems in the world. He could outwit the FBI and the Secret Service for over a year. He could move a fortune through the blockchain like a professional. What he could not do was resist wanting to be somebody. And that, not the SIM swap, not the 48 million, not the blockchain, that is what gave him away. He served his time in Canada as a boy whose name the court would not speak. He served time in America as a man. And whatever he does next, wherever he goes, the law that protected the 17-year-old will keep protecting him for the rest of his life. We know what he did. We know how he was caught. We will never know who he is.